The vastness of space was silent, but the tension aboard the Galactic Empire's flagship was palpable. Zoreth, the fleet commander, stood before a large viewing window, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays of his warships scattered across the stars. The flagship was an enormous ship, a symbol of the Empire's dominance in the galaxy. But today, the mood aboard the ship was different. Something felt off. His fleet was headed directly toward Earth, a small planet on the outer edges of the galaxy, but it was a planet that had begun to spark curiosity among the highest ranks of the Empire. Zoreth turned to face his officers, all of whom seemed uneasy. They had been briefed on their mission, to crush any resistance from Earth and take control of the planet. But Zoreth was a seasoned commander. He had seen countless wars, battles, and uprisings, but there was something that gnawed at him. It wasn't the strength of the enemy, it was something much more elusive. The warships were moving in a perfect formation, ready for a strike that would leave the humans with no chance of survival. Yet, despite all the power the Empire held, Zoreth couldn't shake the feeling that there was something about Earth that was beyond their understanding. They had learned that humans were far more resilient and innovative than anyone had anticipated, but even that knowledge seemed too small for what was coming. The commander turned back to the large control panel, tapping a few buttons to activate a series of communications. His eyes scanned the data as a message began to flash on the screen. It was brief, yet its contents were enough to freeze him in place. Warning: humans have developed the ability to end wars before they start. Zoreth read the message again. His fingers tightened around the edge of the console. It was a warning, a statement that struck at the core of everything he knew. The Empire had always been one step ahead of its enemies. Their weapons, their technology, their artificial intelligence, all of it was designed to predict and neutralize threats before they could even take form. But this? This was something entirely different. Impossible, Zoreth muttered under his breath. Humans can't. Before he could finish his thought, an alert chimed. A message from one of his spies. A fleet of reconnaissance ships had been sent to Earth's orbit to gather intelligence on the humans' capabilities. They had been there for several weeks now, monitoring the planet from a distance. As Zoreth's command center went quiet, the information started to flood in. "Sir," came the voice of his intelligence officer. "We've confirmed it. The humans have developed a new kind of technology. They can predict our every move. Not only that, but they can stop it before we even make it." Zoreth's mind raced. He had heard of the human capacity for innovation, but this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. They had always been seen as weak, primitive even, in comparison to the vast might of the Galactic Empire. But now, they were using technology that could potentially rewrite the very rules of war itself. "How is this possible?" Zoreth asked, turning to his team. "Our spies must have missed something. This can't be true." But as the data continued to pour in, the officers around Zoreth started to understand the full gravity of the situation. The humans had indeed cracked the code. They had built a sophisticated system that could track every move the Empire made, predict their strategies, and, most importantly, shut them down before they could even be executed. "Prepare to move forward," Zoreth finally said, his voice cold and controlled despite the unease within him. "We will continue as planned. These humans are nothing. A few technological tricks won't stop us." But deep inside, doubt began to settle in his mind. Zoreth had seen the power of the Empire's fleet firsthand, but the idea that the humans could have developed something so potent, something that could halt a war before it even began, was a concept that felt impossible. Yet, as the minutes passed, his fear grew. It wasn't just a theory anymore. The evidence was right in front of him, and it wasn't just one or two pieces of data, it was a whole system, one that he couldn't ignore. The tension in the control room intensified. Zoreth glanced at his commanders, each one visibly trying to make sense of the information. He had fought in many wars, but this was something new. The technology was unsettling, its implications even more so. If these humans could stop a war before it began, then the Empire's centuries-old dominance could be in jeopardy. The very foundation of their empire was built on the idea that no one could challenge them, that no one could predict their movements. But now, everything was changing. His intelligence officers began reviewing Earth's defenses in greater detail. The humans had built what appeared to be an advanced artificial intelligence, one that was capable of simulating future events. This AI didn't just calculate outcomes, it anticipated them. It was designed to understand every possible scenario and neutralize any threat. The implications of this were catastrophic. If the humans had the ability to predict and stop attacks before they could even be executed, then it wasn't just their defense system that was in danger. The very core of warfare was being rewritten. Zoratha's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden burst of static on the communications system. It was a transmission from Earth itself, a direct challenge. The message was brief but chilling. "We know you're coming," it said. "And we know exactly how to stop you." Zoratha's heart skipped a beat. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. The humans hadn't just prepared for an invasion, they had already predicted it. They knew what the Empire would do, and they were ready to neutralize every move before it could even happen. "We need to act now," Zorath said, his voice rising. "This can't continue. We cannot allow them to control the future of war. Prepare the fleet for immediate action." But even as the command was given, a knot of unease tightened in Zoratha's chest. He knew that the humans had already outsmarted him. The Empire had underestimated them. And now, there was no turning back. As the fleet continued to advance towards Earth, Zoratha's mind raced with the knowledge that his plan, his brilliant, foolproof plan, might already be doomed. Every move he made would be predicted, every strategy anticipated. And with each passing moment, he realized just how outmatched the Galactic Empire truly was. The Empire's fleet continued its relentless advance toward Earth, a dark wave of power that seemed unstoppable. Zoratha's warships, massive and imposing, cut through the vastness of space with an eerie silence, their engines purring with the promise of destruction. The fleet was designed for one purpose: to crush any resistance and establish the Empire's control over the galaxy. But Earth, the planet they had underestimated, had other plans. A plan that would prevent the war before it could even begin. Back on Earth, top scientists had worked tirelessly, day and night, to develop a revolutionary technology. It was a system that could predict every move the enemy would make and stop it before it even took shape. Among these scientists was Bonner, a soldier who had fought on the front lines of numerous battles. Bonner wasn't just a soldier, he was a strategic genius, and his mind worked in ways that few could comprehend. His expertise, combined with Earth's best minds, was about to change the course of history. Bonner stood in the heart of the control room, surrounded by a team of brilliant scientists, engineers, and military experts. His eyes were glued to the holographic screens in front of him, where the entire Galactic Empire fleet was displayed in real time. They could track every ship, every movement, every strategy. Thanks to the advanced AI systems they had developed, Earth was now able to predict any attack with chilling accuracy. The data was overwhelming, but Bonner had a calm, focused demeanor, knowing that this technology was their last hope for survival. "We have it," Bonner said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "This is how we stop them. We can predict their every move, neutralize their ships, and save Earth before they even touch our soil." The control room buzzed with energy as the team activated the cloaking devices. These devices were designed to cloak their ships and hide their movements from the Empire's sensors. But it wasn't just about hiding. They had taken it a step further, using quantum computing to predict and counter every attack. Every move the Empire made would be countered before it could even be executed. No shot would be fired, no battle would be fought, just an invisible, calculated war where humanity would have the upper hand. Bonner and his team had worked tirelessly to ensure that Earth would be prepared for this fight. They had built robotic soldiers, advanced AI, and systems that could predict even the smallest move of the enemy fleet. Zorith and his vast armada would be left in the dark, unaware of the fate that awaited them. As the Galactic Empire fleet approached Earth, Zorith's eyes remained fixed on the radar, scanning for any signs of resistance. His fleet was massive, hundreds of warships, equipped with the most advanced weapons the galaxy had to offer. They had the firepower to obliterate entire planets. Yet, as the ships neared their target, a strange sensation began to settle in. Something was wrong. Zorith couldn't place it, but the silence on his command deck was deafening. His officers, usually confident and composed, were tense, their eyes darting to their screens, unsure of what to expect. Zorith's hand gripped the armrest of his command chair. He had been in countless battles, but this was different. Every strategy, every move he had planned was slipping through his fingers. It was as if the enemy knew exactly what he was going to do before he even gave the command. He glanced at the holographic display of the Earth, now only a few days away. "Status report," Zorith barked. "We're on course, sir," one of his officers replied, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "But, we've detected strange energy readings. It's like they're expecting us." "Expecting us?" Zorith asked, narrowing his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "Sir, every ship in the fleet is being tracked. They're adjusting their positions, it's as if they know what we're going to do next." Zorith's face hardened. He was a master tactician, and he had never encountered an opponent who could predict his every move. But now, that was exactly what was happening. Earth's technology was far beyond anything he had expected. They had developed something more powerful than his fleet, more dangerous than the Empire's advanced weapons. They had developed the ability to end a war before it even began. As the fleet moved closer, Zorith's officers continued to report unusual data. Ships that were once invisible to Earth's sensors now appeared out of nowhere. The cloaking devices they had relied on for stealth were failing. The Empire's warships were being tracked, neutralized, and rendered useless, without a single shot fired. "What is happening?" Zorith shouted. "Why aren't we advancing? Where's the enemy resistance?" But the more he demanded answers, the more confusion spread through the ranks. Their every move had been anticipated. Their ships, cloaked and advanced as they were being predicted and neutralized by Earth's mysterious technology. "Sir, we've lost contact with the lead fleet," another officer called out. "They've been disabled. No weapons fired, no damage detected, they just stopped moving." Zorith's stomach dropped. His fleet was paralyzed, not by force, but by an unseen enemy. Earth's technology was dismantling them without so much as a whimper. The once imposing warships of the Empire were now nothing more than sitting targets, trapped in space, helpless against the overwhelming power of the human AI systems. Back on Earth, Bonner and his team watched with satisfaction as their predictions came true. Every ship that entered Earth's space was neutralized with surgical precision. It wasn't just the technology that had made it possible, it was the human will to survive. The Empire's arrogance had clouded their judgment, and now it was too late. "We've won," Bonner said quietly, but there was no arrogance in his voice, only the satisfaction of knowing that Earth had fought back, not with weapons, but with intelligence, technology, and strategy. The war that was supposed to happen, the battle that would have seen billions of lives lost, was over before it even began. As Zorith watched in disbelief, his fleet immobilized by a force he couldn't understand, he realized the bitter truth: the war was lost, not because of his fleet's power, but because humanity had learned how to prevent wars altogether. The once mighty empire, so sure of its victory, had been defeated by a technology they couldn't even comprehend. Zorith slammed his fist against the console in frustration. The silence on the bridge was deafening. They had come to Earth with the intent to conquer, but instead, they had been outwitted, outclassed, and defeated. The Galactic Empire had never faced an enemy like this before, and for the first time in centuries, it was clear that the humans were no longer the underdogs. They had become the masters of war, the true rulers of their fate. The leadership of the Galactic Empire stood in stunned silence. The room was filled with officers, commanders, and high-ranking officials, all trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding before them. Zorath, who had always seen himself as invincible, was now faced with an enemy he could neither defeat nor understand. The humans, with their strange, unpredictable technology, had already turned the tables in a way that no one could have foreseen. To them, it seemed impossible, almost like an illusion. But it was no illusion. It was the cold, hard reality of humanity's brilliant strategy. Zorath paced furiously across the bridge of his flagship, his mind racing. The Empire had sent wave after wave of warships toward Earth, each one falling into a trap they didn't even know existed. Every move they made was countered before they could even execute it. It was as if Earth had a perfect blueprint of their strategy and knew exactly how to neutralize every attack. There were no mistakes, no surprises. It was a complete and utter defeat, and Zorath couldn't bear it. He had always believed the Empire's power was unmatched. His fleet was vast, with thousands of ships armed with the most advanced weapons technology in the galaxy. But against Earth's new, war-canceling tech, it was all rendered useless. He couldn't comprehend how it worked, or what humans had done to gain such an advantage. To him, it seemed impossible. This is just a temporary setback, Zorath muttered, trying to convince himself. We will crush them, just like we have done with every other race in the galaxy. But deep down, he knew the truth. The longer they fought, the more it became clear that Earth's technology wasn't just a weapon, it was a game-changer. And it wasn't just technology that was fighting back, it was humanity itself. Earth had the one thing the Empire never anticipated, a will to survive unlike anything Zorath had ever encountered. Zorath's gaze turned to the holographic map of the galaxy. Earth was right at the center, its resources and population too valuable to ignore. He had no choice but to press forward. With all his forces immobilized, he ordered his fleet to regroup. The remaining ships would launch a final, all-out assault on Earth. But as the fleet prepared for the assault, Zorath realized that his every move was already anticipated. The humans had already embedded their technology in every corner of their territory. Even as his ships moved, the calculations were already being made. Every angle, every possible move, was being predicted and countered. The humans had trapped them, and there was no escape. The Empire was desperate. Zorath had no other options. He knew he had to act quickly before Earth's forces completely dismantled his fleet. The final attack would be his last chance to turn the tide of the war. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Bonner and his team were preparing for the most dangerous mission they had ever faced. They had already successfully neutralized most of the Empire's fleet from afar, but now, they needed to strike at the heart of the enemy, up close and personal. Bonner knew this would be a risky mission. The odds were stacked against them, but it was the only way to finish the job. The team of soldiers assembled in a hidden bunker deep beneath Earth's surface. The air was thick with tension as Bonner addressed them one final time. "We've taken down their fleet from a distance," Bonner said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "Now, we're going to do what we do best. We're going to get up close and personal. We'll take out their commanders, their officers, and anyone else who stands in our way. This is the final push. We either win here, or we don't win at all." The soldiers nodded in unison, their faces grim but resolute. They knew what was at stake. Earth's future rested on their shoulders. Bonner's team, equipped with cloaking devices and quantum computers, infiltrated the heart of the Empire's remaining fleet. They moved silently, blending into the shadows as they approached their target. But as they entered the enemy's stronghold, they quickly realized just how dangerous this mission was. The Empire had regrouped and was now more vigilant than ever. The team had to fight their way through layers of security and enemy forces, each step bringing them closer to their goal, but also closer to death. The first wave of Empire soldiers met Bonner's team in a narrow hallway. The air was thick with tension as the soldiers readied their weapons. Bonner's team had superior technology, but the Empire had raw strength and experience. The two sides collided in a brutal hand-to-hand combat scene that was both fast and deadly. Bonner fought with the precision and skill of a seasoned warrior. His every move was calculated, but the Empire's soldiers were relentless. Punches were exchanged, knives were drawn, and the sound of metal striking flesh filled the air. Bonner's team pushed forward, cutting through the enemy forces with brutal efficiency. But it came at a cost. As they fought, soldiers fell. Bonner's closest comrades, men and women who had fought beside him for years, were struck down by the overwhelming force of the Empire's soldiers. The emotional weight of the losses hit Bonner like a wave. He could see his team members fall, each death a blow to the heart. But he couldn't afford to stop. Earth needed them. Humanity needed them. In one particularly harrowing moment, Bonner's closest friend, Sergeant Hale, was struck by a blast from an Empire soldier's rifle. Hale had been by Bonner's side since the beginning of the war. He had been the first to volunteer for every dangerous mission. As Hale collapsed to the ground, Bonner rushed to his side. "Hale, no," Bonner whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. But Hale only managed a faint smile before his eyes closed forever. "Finish the mission, Bonner," Hale said with his last breath. "Don't let them win." Those words would stay with Bonner forever. The loss of his friend drove him harder, fueled his determination. They were so close. Earth was on the brink of victory, and no matter what the cost, Bonner would see it through. The team fought their way deeper into the heart of the Empire's stronghold, facing wave after wave of enemy soldiers. The brutality of the battle left them exhausted, but their resolve never wavered. Each soldier that fell made them more determined to push forward. They had come too far to turn back now. With each passing minute, the tension grew. But there was no turning back. Bonner and his remaining team members were on the verge of completing their mission. And as they advanced, one final, decisive battle loomed ahead. The fate of humanity would be decided in the coming hours. And Bonner would stop at nothing to ensure the Empire's reign was over, for good. Zorith had never imagined this moment. He had always prided himself on his strategic brilliance, his unshakable belief that the Galactic Empire was invincible. But now, standing on the bridge of his flagship, he saw the reality that shattered that illusion. His fleet, the pride of the Empire, was completely immobilized, trapped in a game of cat and mouse that they could never win. Earth's war-canceling technology had turned the tide of battle, neutralizing every attack before it could even begin. The last hope for the Empire lay in a desperate final strike, a plan Zorith had kept as his ultimate weapon. He had been preparing it for months. A massive orbital bombardment on Earth's core, an attack so devastating that it would cripple the planet's defenses. His fleet, with its thousands of ships and unimaginable firepower, would rain down destruction on Earth's cities, military bases, and key installations. Once the planet was decimated, humanity would be too weak to continue their resistance. But as the orders were being given, Zorith felt a cold chill in his bones. His mind raced as he realized that Earth's technology had already anticipated this move. The humans didn't just predict galactic wars, they had figured out how to stop them. The orbital bombardment, one of the most powerful tactics the Empire had, would be neutralized before it even began. Zorith's ships, mighty and advanced as they were now utterly useless. The humans had won again. As the bombardment began, the first wave of ships prepared to fire their weapons on Earth's surface. The massive warships were lined up, each ship carrying devastating missiles capable of reducing entire cities to ash. Zorith's hands gripped the command console as he gave the order to fire. The lasers from his fleet charged up, crackling with raw power, aimed at Earth's surface. But just as the deadly beams of light were about to be unleashed, something extraordinary happened. A signal burst across the Empire's communication channels, a warning, or rather, a command: cancel all fire. Now. Zoratha's eyes widened in disbelief. The humans had anticipated this move once more. The entire fleet froze. The bombardment didn't fire. Instead, Zorath watched in horror as his ships began to tremble, their engines stuttering as if something was scrambling their systems. The incredible power of the Empire's ships began to fade, like a sinking ship being dragged under the water. And then, just like that, it was over. A final countermeasure had been activated by Earth's defensive forces. The humans had launched a nanotechnology-based weapon that infiltrated the fleet's systems, disabling their advanced technologies in an instant. Zorath could only watch as his once imposing warships were rendered useless. Their weapons went silent, their engines shut down, and their shields flickered out. The Empire's most advanced ships were now little more than floating wreckage in space, no match for the small, seemingly insignificant forces of Earth. The battle that had been raging for what felt like an eternity was suddenly over. The Empire's forces had been neutralized, their fleet crippled by the technology they had never even seen coming. Zorath had no words. He stood there, staring at the broken ships, his mind struggling to comprehend the scale of the defeat. The Galactic Empire, with all its power, had been brought to its knees by a race of humans who had never known defeat until now. Amidst the chaos of the silent war, the camera pans to Earth's surface, where the battle had been unfolding. In a distant city, an immense space station stood, once a symbol of the Empire's might. It was now on the verge of collapse, slowly falling from the sky as a result of the attack. The city below had been preparing for the worst, but now, with the countermeasure in full effect, the city was untouched by the destruction. It was an eerie scene. The massive space station, once towering over the skyline, now seemed to crumble in slow motion. As the last of the Empire's firepower fizzled out in the distance, the enormous structure fell to Earth's surface with a deafening crash, shaking the ground beneath it. The once great symbol of the Empire's technological supremacy had now become nothing more than a pile of twisted metal and burning debris. From the Earth's perspective, the battle had lasted mere moments. The skies had been filled with the flashing lights of the Empire's warships, and then, as quickly as it had started, everything went dark. The only sound was the echoing rumble of collapsing structures as humanity's victory became clear. In space, Zoratha's flagship was one of the last ships still drifting, its systems barely functional. He could only watch as the remaining fleet members surrendered one by one. The once proud warriors of the Galactic Empire, who had brought destruction to countless civilizations, were now powerless, their fate sealed by the same humans they had tried to conquer. Zorath ordered one final broadcast, his voice laced with frustration and disbelief. "This is Zorath, commander of the Galactic Empire's fleet. We surrender. The Empire has fallen." But even as he spoke those words, something else was happening. The surviving members of the fleet, once enemies of Earth, were now surrounded by the very forces they had tried to destroy. The humans had succeeded not only in defeating them, but in showing the true power of unity, intelligence, and sheer determination. Earth had become the undisputed victor, and the Empire had no choice but to submit. In a final, desperate attempt to negotiate, Zorath sent one last plea: "We beg for mercy. We did not know you had such power. Spare us, and we will retreat, never to return." But the response was not what Zorath expected. The humans had already made their decision. Earth had won, not because of brute strength or overwhelming force, but because they had outsmarted the Empire at every turn. The Galactic Empire, for all its technological prowess, had been undone by the ingenuity of a species that had been underestimated. The final act of the war played out in a cinematic scene. The broken fleet of the Empire, now floating helplessly in space, was surrounded by Earth's forces. The once dominant warships were now little more than debris, their once glowing weapons and shields now completely inactive. Earth's technology had taken control, and the Galactic Empire had no choice but to surrender in the face of defeat. As the survivors of the Galactic Empire sent their final messages of surrender, Earth's forces stood victorious. The war that had seemed endless, the conflict that had threatened to tear the galaxy apart, had come to an abrupt end. The Empire's reign of terror was over, and humanity stood as the new force in the galaxy. The silent war had ended in an instant, and it was Earth's technology, ingenuity, and will to survive that had secured the victory. Zorith, standing on his shattered ship, looked out at the vast emptiness of space, realizing the truth. It wasn't just about technology. It was about what humanity had, something that the Empire could never have: hope, resilience, and the will to never give up. The Galactic Empire had been defeated. And Earth's victory would echo through the stars for generations to come. The moment Zorith and his fleet finally surrendered, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The Galactic Empire, once a symbol of power and domination, had crumbled. Earth, the underdog, had not only survived but emerged victorious, and now, it was humanity's turn to shape the future of the galaxy. Zoritha's pride, his arrogance, all of it had been shattered. He had underestimated the humans at every turn, and now, as he stood with his hands tied in surrender, he realized just how wrong he had been. The humans had already proven themselves time and time again, but this victory was different. It was final. The Empire, with its countless fleets and oppressive rule, had collapsed in the face of Earth's unwavering resistance and technological superiority. Now, Earth stood as the dominant power in the galaxy, but the price of victory had been high, and not everyone would be there to witness it. Bonner, the soldier who had led the charge on countless missions, the one who had been the rock for his team, was gone. His sacrifice had been the turning point in the war. He had died on the front lines, his last breath marking the end of a battle that would forever change the course of history. His team had fought bravely, but it was Bonner's leadership that had guided them through the darkest hours. And now, in the aftermath of the war, the weight of his death hung heavy in the air. It was a moment of silence for Bonner. His comrades, the soldiers who had followed him into battle, felt the loss deeply. But they also knew that his death had not been in vain. Bonner had died fighting for a future where humanity could thrive, a future where the galaxy would no longer be under the thumb of the Empire. His sacrifice was the foundation of the peace that would follow. But peace, even one hard one, is never simple. The Galactic Empire had left behind a legacy of pain and suffering. Planets that had been under its control for centuries were left in ruins. The people of those planets had suffered under the Empire's iron fist, and now, as the dust settled, they were left to pick up the pieces. Earth had to take charge, to ensure that the peace they fought so hard for didn't slip away in the chaos of rebuilding. The leadership of the Galactic Empire, once so sure of their invincibility, now stood humbled. The men and women who had once looked down on humanity, who had thought of Earth as nothing more than a primitive planet, were now forced to confront the consequences of their underestimation. They had believed that the galaxy was theirs to rule, that no force could challenge the might of the Empire. But in the end, it wasn't the size of their fleet or the power of their technology that had brought them down, it was the humans' ability to adapt, to fight with everything they had, and to use their intelligence in ways the Empire couldn't even imagine. Zorith, who had been at the forefront of the Empire's last attempt to conquer Earth, now found himself face to face with the very humans he had once dismissed. His pride had turned to regret, and in that moment, he realized that the war was over. The Empire's dominance was gone, and the galaxy was now in humanity's hands. The humans' victory wasn't just about their technological prowess, it was about something deeper. It was about the resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering determination to survive no matter the odds. It was about the sacrifices made, not just by soldiers like Bonner, but by every single person who had fought for the freedom of their world. The victory was a reflection of humanity's core values: unity, strength, and the will to keep fighting. As Earth's new leaders began to take their place, a sense of responsibility weighed heavily on their shoulders. They had to ensure that the peace they had fought for would be maintained, but doing so wouldn't be easy. There were many factions in the galaxy that didn't share Earth's vision for the future. Some were content with their own power, while others sought to rebuild the Empire in secret. The human-led galaxy was now faced with the challenge of uniting these divided forces, ensuring that the mistakes of the past weren't repeated. The human leadership knew that the road ahead would be difficult. It wasn't just about enforcing peace, it was about creating a future where all races, all species, could coexist. They had the power to shape the galaxy, but they also had the responsibility to make sure that power wasn't abused. The rise of Earth as the dominant force was a new beginning, but it was one that came with many challenges. The final moments of the war had been swift, but the aftermath was far more complicated. The technology that had given Earth its edge was powerful, but it was also dangerous. The very weapons that had won the war could also be used to destroy what humanity had built. There were factions within Earth's leadership that sought to use this power for their own gain, and not all of them had noble intentions. It was up to those who understood the true cost of war to ensure that the galaxy's future was one of peace and not one of domination. In the heart of the newly established capital, Earth's leaders gathered to discuss the future. They knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The peace they had won was fragile, and they had to protect it. But they also knew that the sacrifices of soldiers like Bonner, the lives lost in the struggle, could not be forgotten. Earth's future wasn't just about technology, it was about ensuring that the mistakes of the past didn't repeat themselves. Bonner's death was a symbol of the cost of victory. His team had fought with everything they had, and in the end, it was their sacrifices that had led to the fall of the Galactic Empire. His name would live on, not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it stood united. The victory had come at a high price, but the hope for the future was now in humanity's hands. Earth had defeated the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known, and now, it was time for humanity to lead, to rebuild, and to ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. The galaxy would be shaped by those who understood the value of peace, those who knew that the true power lay not in weapons or fleets, but in the hearts of the people. The empire had collapsed, but humanity had risen, and now, the galaxy would see the dawn of a new era, one where Earth would shape its destiny, not through force, but through wisdom and unity. This expanded version of Part 5 includes a focus on the emotional weight of Bonner's sacrifice, the realization of the Empire's collapse, and the challenges humanity faces as they rebuild and lead the galaxy. It emphasizes both the personal and collective journey of the characters, making it engaging and emotionally resonant for the audience. The final scene unfolded across the vast expanse of the galaxy. It wasn't a grand battle or a violent last stand, it was something far more powerful, a moment of resolution. The human leadership, now standing as the dominant force in the galaxy, had offered a new path forward to the leaders of the Galactic Empire who had once thought of them as nothing more than an insignificant, primitive species. The leaders of the Empire, who had once felt invincible, now found themselves at a crossroads. They had no choice but to accept the new terms that humanity had laid out, terms that were based on peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. The last remnants of the Empire, broken and humbled, would now have to adapt or perish. The terms were simple but profound: no more war, no more conquest. It was a declaration of peace, but it was also a challenge to every former leader of the Galactic Empire. Could they truly accept this new reality, where their ambitions of power and domination were no longer the driving force? Could they shift their mindset to one of cooperation, to one where their fate was tied to the rest of the galaxy rather than seeking to control it? The choice was now in their hands, but the humans had made it clear, they would no longer be at the mercy of anyone. As the final steps of the Empire's surrender took place, Earth's leaders gathered in the heart of their new capital. The ceremony was not one of celebration, but of reflection. It wasn't about victory, it was about what came next. The galaxy had been through too much, and they couldn't afford to let greed, pride, or war take hold again. The leadership had to be wise and patient, understanding the weight of their newfound responsibility. And so, the terms of the new peace began to take shape. Across the galaxy, leaders from every corner of the known universe were signing the new peace agreements. Planet by planet, race by race, they all came together, bound by the shared desire for a future without the horrors of war. These agreements were more than just legal documents, they were symbols of hope, of a new beginning. A new era was dawning, one where the galaxy could thrive in peace, where the lessons learned from the past would guide the future. Humanity, once an insignificant planet lost in the farthest reaches of space, had now become the beacon of peace. The very species that had once been on the verge of extinction at the hands of a ruthless empire now held the power to shape the galaxy. Their technology, their AI, and their wisdom had won them this place at the table, but it was their strength, their resilience, and their capacity for unity that had truly made them the new leaders. The galaxy, once a place of endless conflict and power struggles, was now united under the banner of peace. Earth's leadership worked tirelessly to ensure that the terms of the new peace were not just agreements on paper but were lived out in every corner of the galaxy. It wasn't enough to stop the war, it was important to make sure that the roots of war were removed, that the old ideologies of dominance and fear were eradicated. As the final signatures were being added to the peace treaties, there was a moment of silence. This was no ordinary peace. This was the peace that had come at a high cost, the peace that had been hard-won by countless sacrifices. The human soldiers who had fought on the front lines, the brave men and women who had risked their lives to protect their world, were now remembered in a way that transcended politics. They were not just soldiers, they were the heroes who had made this peace possible. Among the fallen, one name stood out more than the rest: Bonner. His sacrifice had been the turning point in the war, the moment that had rallied humanity to rise up against the Empire's forces. Bonner's death had been a sacrifice not just for his comrades, but for every living being in the galaxy. His leadership had inspired his team to fight against overwhelming odds, and now, even though he was gone, his legacy lived on in the peace that was being forged. The ceremony, held in Earth's newly established capital, was a tribute to Bonner and his fallen comrades. There, in the heart of the human-led galaxy, monuments were built in their honor, and their names were etched into the annals of history. They were the foundation on which the new galaxy was built. Their bravery, their determination, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the future of humanity and the galaxy were the reasons that peace had prevailed. The new era was one of hope. The silent war, the war that had ravaged the galaxy for so long, was officially over. But this peace was not something that could be taken for granted. The human leadership knew that the galaxy was a fragile thing, and even the smallest spark could reignite the flames of war. It was up to them to keep that spark from turning into a blaze. It was up to them to guide the galaxy forward with wisdom, with patience, and with an unwavering commitment to the values of peace and cooperation. Humanity, the underdogs who had risen from the ashes of their own near destruction, had now become the protectors of the galaxy. They had proven that they were not just survivors but leaders, capable of bringing about a new age of peace. Their victory had been hard-won, but it was theirs, and with it came a responsibility greater than anything they had ever known. As the camera panned across the galaxy, showing the peace treaties being signed, there was a sense of finality. The Empire had fallen, and with it, the old ways of thinking. The galaxy had been given a chance to heal, to rebuild, and to thrive in a way that had once seemed impossible. The universe was now a different place, one that was defined not by war and conquest, but by unity and cooperation. The final shot was of Earth's capital, a city that now stood as the symbol of this new age. It was a city built on the ashes of the past, but it was a city that looked toward the future. As the camera pulled back, showing the vast expanse of space and the peaceful planets that had once been at war, it was clear that the galaxy had entered a new era. The humans, the ones who had been written off, the ones who had been underestimated, had proven that they were capable of much more than anyone had ever imagined. This was the new dawn for the galaxy, a dawn of peace, a dawn of hope, and a dawn of humanity's rise as the protectors of the galaxy's future. The sacrifices made along the way, the bloodshed, the loss, the struggles, none of it had been in vain. And as the story drew to a close, humanity stood at the helm of the galaxy, ready to lead, ready to protect, and ready to build a future where peace was no longer a dream, but a reality. The galaxy was at peace. And humanity, for the first time in history, was its guardian.